Hey, what's up? If there is one thing the modern American left completely misunderstands, it is this. Millions of people who come to the United States from collapsing countries are not fleeing capitalism. They are fleeing corruption, government failure, authoritarianism, cartel violence, economic destruction, and in many cases, the exact kinds of policies that grow when governments become too powerful, too centralized, too ideological, and too disconnected from reality. And yet somehow, Democrat politicians in America act like every illegal immigrant crossing the border is automatically going to become a loyal supporter of progressive socialist-style politics. That assumption may end up being one of the biggest political miscalculations in modern history. Because when you actually listen to people who escape these countries, many of them are deeply skeptical of big government promises. They've heard those promises before. They've lived through them, and they know exactly how they end. The modern American progressive movement constantly talks about expanding government control over healthcare, energy, education, housing, banking, speech, industry, and even information itself. But the irony is that many immigrants coming here escaped countries where governments already tried controlling everything, and it failed spectacularly. Let's start with Venezuela, one of the clearest examples in the modern world. Venezuela was once one of the richest countries in Latin America. It had enormous oil reserves, a growing middle class, and massive economic potential. Then came Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. The government nationalized industries, expanded state control, punished private enterprise, used populist rhetoric to divide society into the people versus the rich. Sound familiar? The result? Economic collapse, hyperinflation, food shortages, power outages, government corruption on a massive scale. Millions fled the country, not because of free market capitalism, because centralized government control destroyed the economy while corrupt elites consolidated power. Now look at Cuba. For decades, Americans on the left romanticized Cuba as some kind of socialist paradise. But Cubans themselves risked their lives floating across the ocean on homemade rafts to escape it. Why? Because when government controls opportunity, controls business, controls speech, and controls economic mobility, ordinary people become trapped. Cubans didn't flee because they hated freedom. They fled because they wanted freedom, the ability to own property, start businesses, speak openly, build wealth, control their own future. That is not socialism. That is capitalism and liberty. Now look at Nicaragua, another country where authoritarian socialist leadership concentrated power, weakened institutions, crushed opposition, and drove economic instability. Or look at Argentina, a country with enormous natural wealth and potential that spent decades trapped in cycles of economic populism, reckless spending, inflation, and government overreach. Or even Mexico. Now let's be clear here because facts matter. Mexico is not a socialist country. But many of the problems driving migration from Mexico involve government corruption, cartel influence, weak institutions, lack of economic mobility, and political systems where ordinary citizens often feel powerless against entrenched elites. People come to America because despite all our problems, the United States still offers something almost nowhere else does: the opportunity to rise through hard work, personal responsibility, and economic freedom. That matters. The largest populations of illegal immigrants historically have come from countries like Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Venezuela. And what do many of those countries have in common? Weak institutions, corruption, violence, economic instability, heavy government dysfunction, and limited opportunity. People are not risking their lives to cross deserts, rivers, and cartel territory because they want more government control. Most are coming because they want safety, stability, jobs, and the chance to build a better future. That's the American dream. And the American dream was built by free markets, constitutional rights, private property, entrepreneurship, and individual liberty, not socialism. Here's the reality modern progressives refuse to admit. A lot of immigrants are culturally conservative, especially immigrants from Latin America. Many are religious, family-oriented, hardworking, entrepreneurial, patriotic. Many oppose radical gender ideology. Many support law enforcement. Many believe in strong borders once they are established here legally. Many value faith, work ethic, and traditional family structure far more than elite college activists in wealthy American cities. And the longer immigrant communities stay in America, the more complicated the political picture becomes. Because people who start businesses, buy homes, raise families, and pay taxes often become less interested in radical political experiments. They begin caring about inflation, crime, education, taxes, economic opportunity, and government overreach. Exactly the same things working class Americans care about. That does not mean all immigrants become conservatives. Of course not. Politics is complicated. People are individuals. But the assumption that millions of immigrants automatically support progressive socialist policies is intellectually lazy, especially when many of those immigrants escaped systems where corruption and centralized government power ruined entire nations. And here's something else nobody wants to say out loud. The American left often talks about immigrants in a way that sounds incredibly patronizing, as if immigrants are political tools, voting blocks, demographic chess pieces, not human beings with their own experiences, values, beliefs, and memories. That mindset is offensive, because many immigrants are smarter about the dangers of government overreach than privileged Americans who grew up safe inside the strongest economy on earth. People who have watched inflation destroy savings understand economic instability. People who have watched government censor dissent understand why free speech matters. People who have seen corruption dominate institutions understand why constitutional protections matter. People who escaped authoritarianism understand how quickly freedom can disappear. And that is why many legal immigrants who came from socialist or authoritarian countries become fiercely patriotic Americans. Talk to Cuban Americans in Florida. Talk to Venezuelan Americans. Talk to people who escaped communist Eastern Europe decades ago. Many of them are among the strongest anti-socialist voices in America precisely because they have seen where those ideas can lead when unchecked. And that is the key distinction. Conservatives believe America is exceptional because power is supposed to belong to the people, not the government. Because rights come from God and the Constitution, not politicians. Because free markets create prosperity better than centralized bureaucracies ever could. Because individuals, not government agencies, should shape their own destiny. That does not mean America is perfect. No serious conservative believes that. America has corruption, corporate greed, political dysfunction, bureaucratic waste, terrible politicians. But the answer is not to give those same institutions even more power over your life. The answer is accountability, liberty, strong institutions, economic freedom, secure borders, and equal application of the law. And here's where the political establishment may be in for a surprise. If millions of immigrants fully assimilate into American culture over time, many may end up supporting the values that made America successful in the first place. Freedom, opportunity, merit, entrepreneurship, faith, family, patriotism, national sovereignty, not because they are manipulated into it, but because they live through the alternative. And they know exactly what happens when governments promise utopia while destroying the foundations of prosperity underneath it. That is why the future political battle in America may not look the way activists expect. Because people who escaped failed systems often become the strongest defenders of freedom once they finally reach it. And that may end up being the greatest irony of all.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Peace!